Hey guys, welcome back. This time we're going to be taking a look at Star Trek Ascendancy, the Vulcan High Command expansion. And this is a expansion pack that adds the Vulcans to your Star Trek Ascendancy game. These were delayed for quite a while. They finally came out, finally got my hands on them. I haven't played enough games with the new races yet to do a race overview, but those are coming down the road. But for right now, I'm going to show you everything that comes in the box. So let's get right in and take a look. So of course, first thing we have is our little rules flyer. And they have a contents list of everything that's in there. We have a thing for adding them as a player. They allow you to add a new race to the game or give you an alternative to one of the others, so you can up your player count or just give you more options. They have some special rules for setup because they are a bit different than others, and they have the agenda cards, which we will get to. We have our command console with their two racial abilities. First one is logical observers. The Vulcans are loath to destroy civilizations with potential to eventually become partners or allies. They may not invade or attempt hegemony against a system controlled by a rival with lower ascendancy. So you have to keep that in mind. They also start at a 3, so right off the bat you can't invade opponents until they at least catch up to you. The next ability is honest meddling. Vulcans may use their commands to move other players' ships if they have a trade agreement with that player and that player agrees to give them permission to do so. When moving another player's ships, all results, hazards, rewards, and etc. of that movement still apply to the player whose ships are being moved. So that one's kind of neat. You can make an agreement with people to move their ships around, maybe to somewhere where you need them, or to help them out in exchange for something later on. Next we have the Ancient Civilization special rule. The Vulcans' past exploration seeded the galaxy with Vulcan colonies and systems. Some of these have since lost contact with Vulcan, and are waiting to be rediscovered. You actually get the ability to colonize a undeveloped system pretty much anywhere on the map, and you don't need to occupy it by spending an ascendancy. And it gives you another use for those, which we'll get to in a minute, because there's a debate on the way the Vulcans work. But yeah, it allows you to spend ascendancy tokens to colonize uncontrolled systems, even ones they're not connected to. It's done on the Vulcan turn during the build phase. It's the only way the Vulcan player can colonize new systems. So keep that in mind. You also have the fact, since you're spending ascendancy tokens, if you drop below the number of fleets you have in play, you must immediately disband fleets until it's no longer the case. So you start out with 3 ascendancy, which says there. So you can build all 3 of your fleets right off the start if you have enough ships. And say you spend one of these to colonize a planet. Now all of a sudden you're down to 2, you must disband one of those fleets. So you got to keep that in mind while playing them. Another interesting Vulcan ability is the Vulcan ambassadors. Vulcans are experts at diplomacy. They may place ambassadors on a system. You do not build star bases. Vulcan player can place their ambassadors using their console fleet. After they're placed, they may exhaust commands to move them around to connected systems that are already connected to where they're placed. Rival players may remove an ambassador from their system on their turn. Many Vulcan advancements give you a bonus if you have an ambassador in the system. So they're kind of, instead of stations, you get these ambassadors that you can move around, and they give you benefits from them. It's an interesting and thematic rule for them. Next we have a look at our Vulcan command control board here. You got our logical observers ability on one side, the honest meddling on the other. Next we move on to our tokens. We've got 10 command tokens for your new race, 22 new production tokens, 16 research tokens, 10 more culture tokens, and 9 more warp tokens. You get a bag full of new nodes. You get 7 more production nodes, 8 more research nodes, and 4 more culture nodes to add to your collection from the base game. I always love the Vulcan ship design. It's rather iconic to them. Definitely cool. May have to actually glue the fleets though, because they do not like staying on the bases. They fall off a lot. And of course the standard ships is the exact same thing, just a bit smaller. Then we have our Vulcan control nodes, which look like Vulcan temples. They're really tall. Look kind of cool with the nodes around them too on the table. See the detail in the buildings there. And then we have our Vulcan ambassadors. They actually give you models instead of tokens for these, which are kind of cool. And these are the guys you're going to be placing around on various planets to gain that abilities for having an ambassador. And kind of skip these, but you actually get 8 Ascendancy tokens instead of 5 with this race, because they have a special ability that may require them to get to 8 in order to win. And of course you get a full set of extra space lanes to expand your original game. Under our cards we have our trade agreements. And again, like the Andorians, they have research possible in there. You actually get one of each, so you have your research trade agreement, your production trade agreement, and a culture trade agreement, which is very sought after. You only get 1 on each, so no 2, no 3, but definitely agreements that people are looking for and definitely in demand. So doing everything out of order here, we're going to get into our phase card, and everything's pretty standard, except when you get down here, there's a mistake on here due to an old rule set for the Vulcans that was changed, where you can commit any resource to a project. It allows you to add 1 resource token to each of your projects. This has been errated. It is a research token, not a resource. They even have the symbols for all of them. That was an old idea that changed, so it's back to normal, and it's in the rules, I believe, as well as in the FAQ, that it's just standard research. Oh, it's also worth noting the colonization on here again. The only way to colonize systems are undeveloped systems, and you have to spend 1 of your Ascendancy tokens to do it. So you're going to be doing a lot of time doing hegemony to take over systems. On the backside here, everything's pretty standard, except the fact that there is no commission star bases, because you don't have those, you have the ambassadors instead. Onto our fleets. First one here is the Consul Halittra. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Halittra. And this one is a 5-ship fleet. When in orbit of an independent civilization or a rival civilization whose trade agreement you hold, this fleet may place or remove an ambassador. This does not issue a command. It may not be done while moving. So you pretty much have to stop in orbit of the system, but you can drop off one of the ambassadors. Number 2 is the Science Halittra. I'm going to say that wrong every time, and people are going to kill me in the comments for it. This is a 6-ship fleet. Fleet may re-roll any failed hazardous system test or brave the hazard of a phenomenon it occupies without issuing a command. Normally, if you want to sit in a hazard or a phenomenon and collect that research token every time, you have to spend a command, then you brave the hazard. This one gets to do it without braving, and you get to re-roll a failed test, which is nice. And number 3 is the Observation Halittra. That's going to bug me. I should have looked it up. And this is a 4-ship fleet. When entering a new system at impulse speed, this fleet may discard the first drawn exploration card and draw a new one. When it retreats from a space battle, it may enter warp instead of its normal impulse move. It's a great one for exploration because there's a lot of negative cards that can pop up in the exploration deck. It lets you basically say, no, that one sucks, I'm going to draw something else. No chance that the second one might not suck too, but it gives you an option there. And of course, on our flip side, we've got all 9-ship generic fleets. Onto our advancement cards. The starting advancement is Vulcan High Council. You may build ships and form fleets in any system which you have an ambassador. On your turn, you can use the command to move an ambassador to another system that you control. This allows you to just basically move them around freely as opposed to moving them system to system at the cost of a command. You can move them to any place you own, so they don't have to be connected. They can basically warp home. The other one is really the useful one here, is that you can build in any system that has an ambassador. And since you don't have space stations, that's kind of nice. But the real nice thing is that you get 5 ambassadors, where most people only get 3 stations. So you're looking at having your homeworld plus 5 other locations you can build ships and fleets. Next we have Vulcan High Command. Every system with an ambassador rolls an extra hit die in planetary invasions. This does not specify you, it's the planet that does it. So this is a perk for people letting you put an ambassador on their planet. They get that extra die in defense of their planets during invasions. Next we have the Tomb of Surak. When you complete this advancement, you get 3 culture. It also gives you a command. All players who have at least 1 ambassador in one of their systems also take 1 culture. Again, another reason for people to allow you to put an ambassador in their system. There's a lot of those that give you a perk for having it there, so even as an opposing player, there's a reason to want these guys in your systems. Next we have long-range listening posts. When attacked, your ships may enter warp before the battle begins if there's a Vulcan ambassador in their system or in a system connected to their space lane. So if somebody comes in and tries to jump one of your fleets, they can take off immediately and not have to worry about casualties. And it's really helpful if you have an exploration fleet you're trying to get somewhere and you just don't want them to get destroyed. Next we have Vulcan Exodus. Once completed, you can discard this card if a rival controls the Vulcan system. You may immediately declare a different uncontrolled system or system you control as your new homeworld. Basically lets you move. It makes the original homeworld no longer your homeworld. It's a nice way to get rid of people from winning by taking the military victory, by taking over your homeworld. Suddenly they're short one. It also can be a jump from behind to help you win. If the only thing you're missing is, oh, I'm not in control of my homeworld, I gotta go get that. Well, suddenly you have a new homeworld and you're in control of yours again. Next you have Katra of Surak. When upgrading your shields, you may substitute 2 production for 1 research. Kind of a nice one if you have an abundance of production and not much research. Maybe you're using it to work on advancements and you don't have a lot in surplus. You can spend production to boost your shields up as opposed to those research. Next we have Ministry of Security. For each Vulcan ambassador placed on an independent civilization, you get +1 command. Discard the command if any player takes control of that independent civilization. Basically, this allows you to seed the galaxy with your ambassadors, get bonuses from them, and maybe you don't have enough ascendancy built up to spend to colonize those systems, but at least you're getting something out of it until you get a chance to do so, or somebody takes it away. Next we have Obelisk of Ancient Vulcan. In your building page, you may spend 2 production instead of a research to add research to a project. You're still limited to placing 1 research token on each project, but again, you can spend production if you have a surplus to add research to something if you're using your research somewhere else, or maybe you don't have enough research nodes to fund the things you're trying to work on. Next we have Vulcan Monasteries. Any of your systems which produce at least 1 culture produce an additional culture. If there are no ships in the system or in connected space lanes, encourages you to leave your systems open at the same time as bonus of culture. You've also got to find a way to keep your rivals away from those systems to gain that, but nice once it's in play. Next we have Kurashara, Writings of Surak. Increase the value of any trade agreement you hold by 2 if you also have an ambassador on one of their systems. You must give 1 of those resources to the player whose trade agreement it is. Kind of a nice thing you both get a benefit from. Then we have Ancient Vulcan Reliquary. On your turn after discovering a new system, you may shuffle this advancement into your advancement deck and immediately colonize that system after the exploration card is resolved. Very nice one since it takes you Ascendancy in order to colonize. This gives you an option to do it without having to burn Ascendancy. Next we have the Stone of Gaul. In space battles, you may reroll any dice equal to or higher than your current Ascendancy. Rerolls are always nice. Next we have Vulcan Warp Drive. You can spend a single command to have all Vulcan fleets in a system enter warp. They must exit warp separately, and it gives you 2 warp too, which is really nice. But you can give 1 command to an entire system that's got maybe 3 fleets in it, or they all go to warp together instead of having to spend a command for each fleet. Or very nice. Next we have the Ministry of Diplomacy. When generating resources, take 1 culture for each independent civilization with an ambassador. Add +1 hegemony attempts in every system with a Vulcan ambassador. This is a 2-parter. The Independent civilizations, again, there's a couple other cards that benefit from those. And the bonus here to any system with a ambassador can help opponents, gives you another reason to allow someone to put an ambassador on your system. Next we have communication network. When you colonize a planet, you may immediately build one node at no cost. This can be really useful, especially if you're colonizing a planet that has a culture node on there. For no cost, you can throw a culture node on there and start collecting from it immediately instead of having to wait to build it and spend the resources required to build those nodes. And we're back to the beginning here. Now onto something new and unique to the Vulcans. They have an agenda deck. And what this is basically their victory conditions. Now there's a dispute going on between players and whatnot if the Vulcans can win by standard Ascendancy victory. And I guess someone at GF9 did reply that they could. But if they could, it makes one of these completely useless. I'm trying to think, yeah, this one here. Makes this one completely useless. So I'm of the thought that you cannot win by a standard Ascendancy victory. That's reinforced by the fact that this card exists and the fact that you start with 3 Ascendancy already. So definitely I'm on that side of the fence. Otherwise this card would be pointless and you already got a very unfair advantage. So these Ascendancy cards, at the beginning of the game you're going to draw 2 of these. And one of them is going to be face up for everyone to see and the other is face down. The face down one, only the Vulcan player knows what it is. The face up one, anybody can see what it is. And either of these can achieve victory for the Vulcan player. So your agendas and different win conditions. You can win the game by controlling 10 systems on your turn. You can win the game by occupying 6 phenomena. You can win the game by reaching 8 Ascendancy. Again, if you could win by 5, this card is completely pointless, so pretty sure that's the way the ruling should be. You can win the game by controlling 9 research nodes. You can win the game by orbiting 8 developed systems you do not control. You can win the game by having 8 warp tokens pictured on your completed advancements. All of your advancements have that optional warp token down in the bottom corner. You can win the game by controlling 7 culture nodes. You can win the game by controlling 12 production nodes. You can win the game by fully upgrading your weapons and shields. This is really common one, especially if you're playing with the Andorians, because it becomes a weapons race to boost things up. But it is a long game one, because it does cost a lot of research to boost those. You do get those couple advancements to let you boost your shields up extra by using production, which help. You can win the game by having completed 3 advancements from other players, with at least 1 from each player. There's a lot of things that allow you to steal advancements from other players. And as I said, one of these will be revealed so everyone at the table is aware of. The other one is not. As the Vulcan player, you can kind of play 2 of them. If I start occupying a lot of phenomenons, people are going to think I have that one. Whether I have that as my face down hidden agenda or not, it's going to make them think that, and they're going to try to stop me from that, and I can possibly be doing something completely different that they're just not seeing. It's a very interesting win condition for them, and adds a lot of strategy to them, because if you blatantly be obvious and go off and do something, they're going to know what you're doing. They're going to stop you from doing it. If you play to the fact that you may have a couple of those, you know, start occupying uncontrolled systems. Start spreading your ships out to places. Take a lot of places with production nodes, with culture nodes. Nobody's going to have a clue what you're working on until it comes to that victory check thing and you reveal that. You also have the face-up one, which they can see. You can work on that if you want to or not. Maybe people will forget about it by mid-game because they're concentrating on trying to figure out what your hidden one is. A lot of different ways there. I really like that mechanic. Onto our exploration cards. First off, we have a Vulcan encounter. There's one of these for every race now, I think. If you have a Vulcan rival, you place a Vulcan ship in the system. If not, it's the player to your right. Orion Interceptors is a hazard level 4. If any ships survive the hazard, you can draw one card from a rival's advancement deck and immediately put it into play with your completed advancements. This can be cool if you draw something cool. It can be useless if you draw something that requires a specific thing that you do not have. Next we have Black Star, which is a level 4 hazard. If any ships survive the hazard, you refresh 2 commands. That can be very useful. Next we have Sargon Encounter. Put all of your ships in this system at warp. The player to your right may move these ships to your maximum warp once, and then the ships exit warp without issuing a command. That can be bad for you depending on where they end up. It could be okay if you're friendly with the person and they don't screw you over. Next we have Arconian Destroyer. It's a level 5 hazard. Roll to hit with all of your ships. If you score at least 1 hit and at least one of your ships survives, you get 2 production. Next we have Dark Reflections. Roll a die and add your Ascendancy. If the result is 8 or higher, take a culture. If it's 7 or lower, the player opposite you may issue up to 3 of your commands on this turn to this ship or fleet, ignoring special rules on your command console. That one can be really nasty, depending on how much of a jerk the players want to be. Next we have Peaceful Meditation. Take 1 culture or destroy one of your ships in this system and take 3 production. Then we have a couple of civilization cards. We have a pre-warp level 0, a warp capable level 1, and a warp capable level 3. And finally we have our system tiles. I don't know why they went with the Vulcan command logo instead of the iconic, drawing a blank on what it's called now, but the standard Vulcan logo. Even the original concept art had the normal logo, and then they changed it. But there's our Vulcan homeworld. Under our other systems, we have a Singularity Cluster, which is a level 3 hazard. Add 1 research per round until the system holds 3 research. Take all research after successfully braving this hazard. So it's a hard hazard to get by, but if you do, you can get up to 3 depending on how long it's been since somebody claimed it last. Next we have Temporal Anomaly, which is a level 4 hazard. When you brave this hazard, you also roll a space lane die. On a roll of 3, refresh 1 command. On a roll of 4, you refresh 2 commands. Very nice. Next we have Benzar. It's a level 5 hazard. 2 research nodes, which is nice. Mazar, which is a standard 3-node planet with 1 of each. Trill, which you also get a culture token when you discover, and it has a production and a culture node. Ditalix B, which is a nice 3 production planet. Yuri, which has a culture and a research. Valis 14, which has a production and a research. Nervala 4, which has 2 research. A lot of small planets in this one. Only 2 nodes on them. Now there's a look at everything that comes in the Vulcan High Command expansion for Star Trek Ascendancy. I've only played this one a few times so far, and it adds an interesting new twist to the game because of the agendas. People are constantly on the lookout for various win conditions that you might have as you're hidden. And I really like the way the ambassadors work. Gives players a reason to let you get them on your planets, though they may benefit you as much, if not more than them. So there's a little trade-off there of how much you want to help. The trade agreements having a research and culture option are very nice. That culture trade is always well wanted by anyone. The honest meddling ability is kind of hit or miss. It depends on if you can make a good alliance with someone to really make use of it. The logical observer's ability is pretty much a detriment all around, but it gives you something, basically negates the fact that you're starting with 3 Ascendancy where everybody else is starting with 1. And the fact that it costs you Ascendancy in order to colonize planets is really hurtful early on. And once you get a couple planets under your control and you have a source of culture incoming, it's not so bad. But at the same time, you're starting off with 3 Ascendancy, so you get those hegemony attempts to take over planets. That adds to your resources more quickly than colonizing. You're probably going to do that more often than colonizing, especially early on in the game. Overall, though, they're a really fun faction. I love the ship models, and it's something new and unique. It's different enough to stand out among all the other races and really add something to the game. makes you think a little bit more and play a little more strategically. Not sure whether you can trust them or not, depending on what they're up to. And it adds an interesting new aspect to the game. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for our look at the Vulcan High Command expansion for Star Trek Ascendancy. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.